Hey, you guys, it's MJ from Alta Love. How are you? I want to talk about energetic or emotional transference, what that means, what it looks like, and then shadow work and collective healing. So, emotional transference and collective healing and shadow work really, they all go together. Um, Shadow work is just, I don't know, in a weird way, kind of have trouble with that language because it's sort of a demonic or a negative connotation on our emotions. So people are like, shadow work. It's like, yeah, you're a human like everybody else who has negative emotion. We don't need to call it this thing, right? And yet I understand why we call it that because it's the shadows, it's stuff we often don't see, it's our unconscious, right? So when we see ugliness and have uncomfortable stuff happening around us, it's our own unconscious, hence the shadow. But I don't know, I'm sitting with this subtlety of there's nothing wrong with our negative emotions. When they're out in the open, they're out in the open. If you're being negative, if you're being bitchy, if you're being harsh, that's the shadow, but it's not hidden anymore. It's out in the open. So by the time we're actually doing shadow work, we're just healing. We're not, you know, I don't know, it's not shadow work to me. It's just inner work. It's just us owning and transforming our emotional baggage, our emotional density, right? Um, I think calling it something gives it a little bit maybe more um, energy or maybe more attention than it deserves, other than just sitting with our uncomfortable emotions, which we've been in denial of doing for however long because we've all been trying to put out these masks and these, you know, projections of ourselves in the 3D concept of reality. Now that the 3D concept of reality is breaking down within us and all around us, we're having to make transitions. And to me, the bridge, part of the bridge is this idea of shadow work because it makes maybe people who are too much in the ego or too much in like the love light false grid that they have to call it something to make it important or something. I don't know. I'm not explaining it very well. I have this sort of thing that I'm working with it. I'm like, yeah, it's just our emotions. You know, there's the full spectrum of emotions, and sometimes we're feeling and expressing these ones, sometimes we're feeling and expressing these ones. Both polarities are totally in equanimity and totally allowed to be there. So, and again, once we're feeling and expressing a negative emotion, it's not really in the shadows anymore. It's not unconscious anymore. It's right there in broad daylight for us to see. So, you know, I would rather call shadow work just inner work. It's just par for the course, you know? We don't have to keep it in the shadows because that's not where it remains. It disappears once we expose it. If we're keeping our negative stuff in the shadows, we're probably still deflecting them. We're probably still bypassing some of them. So, emotional transference is more to do with when we're in group collectives. And for those of you to understand the the resonance of something like the Fearless Life Guide for, again, I don't like labels, but like the light worker community or those aware of the new paradigm and assisting with the collective shift and spiritual awakening, or simply like an awakening to our broader power. It's not spiritual necessarily in its nature because we're already all spiritual. So it's just an awakening where we see more of ourselves and we see through the veils. So we are aware that we're not living in this 3D illusion anymore. We're aware that we are infinite portals of creation. So more and more of us accessing that infinite portal, we recognize the unity in our collective frequencies. So emotional transference simply means that we can be in an environment and pick up the emotions and then be the ones to have to process them. So for example, maybe we're at a wake or a funeral and there's a dominant collective vibration of men of a certain generation who don't cry. They don't feel their emotions. So as an emotional being and or light worker and or just a human who feels stuff, you could be in that environment and get almost like floored with waves of tears. and then even have to go away from that collective environment and process loads of emotion. The way I see it is that we do pick it up. So I remember even in my ayahuasca experience, right, in the first round, um, there was a woman having like a really massive clearing, and people were around her, but it was almost like the dominant awareness was like she was having a hard time moving through that storm. And then again, like hi, like someone from across the room, she like got up. She then sat right in front of this woman having the experience, and she just started clearing. She was like staring face to face, but probably about 2 meters away from her. And she just started crying and crying and crying and crying. And then she got up and she left. And the day after, I asked her about that, and she's like, I don't even remember doing that. And I'm like, yeah, it's the higher self. So the higher self will put us in situations, if we are energy workers, put us in situations where we have the ability to clear out energetic trauma patterns from a collective frequency. So this is where collectively we're moving to this place of, again, collectivity, telepathy, unity, in as far as there's just some of us who have greater emotional depth and awareness. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. Just like some people have an intellect that can really work stuff out, or an innovative mind or way of bringing creation. It's like people like to build stuff, and people like to create, and people like to use their mind. And some of us have this emotional awareness that around the world has been probably more brutally denied than a lot of other things. So for us to remember our emotional body and not disown it into the shadows, right? It's not about claiming all of our emotions on a certain frequency as the shadow, like negative. It just is what it is. We ebb and flow with energetic frequency and wavelength. And the better we get at just allowing all of it to be there and riding the waves of the energy, the better energy workers we become. And to me personally, being an energy worker is being an energy worker in the light, so that you can see all of it and you can expose all of it. We don't want to be an energy worker in the shadows, because the end up we just either stay in the shadows, or we're actually bypass and deny it as something outside of us, like something like this unconscious shadow thing that keeps coming back. Well, embrace it. Look at it in the light of your awareness. Bring it into your totality instead of keeping it in the shadows. So, for the collective healing, we're really stepping into this next level of understanding how energetic transference works, how emotional transference works, what the role of the empath and or light worker, what that it means. And but again, you could say part of the distortion of light worker communities then being like in the shadows, and you can see the polarity of distortion and denial within it. Like, I'm a light worker, yeah, and who has the shadow, or we're just all human beings with a full spectrum, you know? We're all human beings with a spectrum of emotions and or energies, and we can either contain the fullness of who we are and be that expression. So that means the light and the shadow, the light and the dark. We're not one polarity, but within that integration, within that ability to unify our two aspects, knowing the fullness of both polarities, then we can come into harmonic balance as a vessel, a creative light vessel on this, because really the shadow is us projecting our light into something, right? So we're never the shadow, it's just looking around at it. We're in essence always the light, right? Me too. Nice one, John. Yeah, right? Energy, because we're just always working with energy. And for some reason when I invoke this term of light worker, it's like I feel, yeah, one doesn't change the world that she is in, one changes their frequency of themselves and the world they prefer. Energy work. Like that's all we're ever doing. We're only ever like working with the energies that we are, And if we don't like something we see, we have to integrate that and change our frequency, change our perception, and then we continue to see something different. It's kind of like a wild ride. Um, but I know from within myself, the less judgment I have against myself, the easier it is and the more humble I get. But then also, that's where these polarity of expressions, like, you get that more in like conscious spiritual communities, like, I'm doing shadow work. I'm like, yeah, join the club of humanity. Like, every it's only really like, I would say, white superiority or like entitled privilege that learn about some spiritual stuff and then are like, oh, I'm doing shadow work, I'm da da da, and I'm like, what, haven't are you a human? Haven't you felt bad emotions like the rest of us? Like, don't you realize that you also have anger and negativity? And then to pretend like we don't, and then suddenly start facing it and be like, oh my god, I'm facing my shadow. I'm like, yeah. Just like, I'm pure love and light. um my ego would like to believe that, but my experience tells me otherwise. Yeah. So there isn't a well, so there isn't really a negative reality out there. Exactly. There isn't really a reality out there. That's like the biggest head spin ever, right? The reality out there is a simulated reality from within our own consciousness field, and then we have a collective simulated reality, but it's all happening within our consciousness. So it doesn't like, the negative, would I would say, was just this like impact and imprint that we've been carrying around from within our beingness. Hence this idea of the great awakening, was that humanity is going from believing this reality, which is perceiving through this frequency, and then we're going, oh, wait a minute, open our eyes and then break through the patterns of limitation and suffering and the certain negativity on that level. And again, we can't integrate the negativity without looking at it. Hence, don't keep it in the shadows. Put it out in broad daylight. Put it out there in the sun. That's, I guess, maybe why I like to share so honestly and vulnerably here, is that I'm like, what is life? What are we all supposed to be doing? Because I don't know half the time. And yet sometimes I feel really like on it. Like, whoa, this is such a cool thing. But I'm still traversing, making strides. My daughter practiced a school presentation last night by Anne Frank, and she went to the concentrations in me. I'm focusing on forgiveness today. Ah, bless you. Right there again, dude. That can be collective emotional release. Because this is still. Oh God, this makes me think about like modern school imprints and how we like imprint the memory of that. And yet, for you as an energy worker, this is good collective pain for forgiveness. Oh, that makes me a little bit emotional, because that is such a powerful timeline to forgive, right? That level of pain and war and conflict. So I appreciate you forgiving. That's good. That's good, because again, when we're at that age, learning about that stuff can often bring us a great sense of compassion and also gratitude for the peace that we have in our lives. And Frank did, yeah. I know, and we all have that potential, right? In our unified field. Nice. Yeah, it does. Like, Anne Frank's a bit of a ledge, isn't she? Really, like, she's a radical pioneer of storytellers ultimately, and um, faith and love and belief and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, guys, there's a lot there, and a lot of it is just like related on some level. But that's what happens when you get woke. You attract people via the internet or in real life. Same to Donnie Black too. Well, yeah, we are one. There's like a so for me to intentionally channel and put out information, it attracts the right energies that will help reflect back to me where I'm at, what I'm sitting with, and also the sense of community, because I know there's been a lot of solitude and isolation, and it's something I'm breaking through now. So even having more of you guys here with me live gives a bigger sense of that internet community, and then that continues to expand the mesh or sense of the mesh outward into the projective field. We're just one consciousness. We're just vibrating on a similar enough frequency to meet in these these different aspects, right? I really appreciate you guys. What's my point of view of the whole male female energy? Honestly, I'm getting to a point where I just feel like anything is um so anything that is a polarity is still a divisive tactic. Again, I can see as a unified being that we have the polarity within us, the dualistic aspect. So within me, there are male qualities and female qualities, or masculine qualities and feminine qualities. But at this point, I can't say, like, there might be certain gender stereotypes or gender imprints that we all personally as beings have to work through. So I have a certain female construct imprint that I need to work through because it's shit and it's divisive. As a man, you guys might have the same. But the truth is, we're all reflections of each other. That's it. Like, we're just reflections. And the more within ourselves that we can dissolve the divisive construct of gender, then we can become more holistic. But I get kind of bored and true. I'm premenstrual, so I like get these moments where I'm just like, not that that matters again, but it's part of the wisdom that we all have, right? Knowing that cycle that we're continuous kind of going through. Yeah, I just see us all as integral whole beings. And the more we come into that integrity and wholeness, the more unified we feel. And so other beings, whether they're men or women, they just reflect us. But a lot of us will be manifesting certain things in relationships to work through those like programmed patterns of projection. I know, me too, right? It feels more whole in our hearts, and it means that we don't have those weird, like, I can't even quite discern it right now, but it's there. So to Donnie Black too, the divine feminine energy needed to save us is possibly a little bit of a like martyrdom sense, but it's because in a dominant in a dominant historical context on the planet, we've told this story of the patriarchy and male domination. So how that's exemplified itself in historical context is denying women's voices. And this isn't something that we can obviously see because you're a conscious man who's open to listening to a man or a woman. But I've lived a life inside my imprint where men don't listen to me, men tell me I'm only good for one thing, men just use me for my sexuality or treat me like a sexual object. Like, literally, men I've just met, just not just disregarding what I say or calling me honey and sweetie in a professional situation, or in work environments, men, like, I know this is harsh, but like in work environments, men laughing around and bending me over and touching and like, just harsh things that really devalue your sense of a human, your sense of just being like, yeah, human, where men dominantly, but women as well, kind of just shut you out. And that doesn't have to be just because I'm a woman. That's part of our culture, right? Um, no, I've not been having many cool dreams. I am sleeping a lot though, and I'm having quite radical insights in between dreaming and waking in the morning. So, Donnie Black, I think it's not like some external divine feminine goddess is coming to save us. It's just the fact that within you, within all of us, the feminine part of us that wants to love us and nurture us and be kind and caring toward us, that's what we need, so that we don't have this mad male energy just going around and raping and taking everything, because it doesn't have its counterpart. Like, it's so if you see like the feminine energy is like loving and nurturing, and then that helps to love and nurture this like powerhouse masculine energy, then it unifies the two. Fucking hell. Honestly, like, that quite reflects my mood. You gotta love a little George Carlin, don't you? That guy put some shit into perspective for us about our humanity and living on this planet and our humongous, glorious egos that just take us off into wonderful tangents, including shadow work. And like, it's not in the fucking shadows. You're just a bit of a dickhead, and now you're realizing it. Well done. Right. I get that too. Thanks, you guys. I really enjoyed the chat this morning. I appreciate you both very, very much. I look forward to having more discussions like this in the future, and enjoy your healing, enjoy your processing, and just go out and enjoy who you are fully. Don't matter what it looks like. I ain't here to judge you. I only here to love you unconditional. I think I should go. I think that was a little bit loud. Thanks, guys. You guys have a great day. I'll speak to you real soon. Peace out, mofo lovers.